What happens when the most feared warrior in the galaxy turns out to be the quiet human you married for political convenience? Princess Zarathul thought she understood warfare. Her people, the Kethmori, had conquered 17 star systems through calculated brutality and technological superiority. When the human colonies proposed a marriage alliance to end their losing war, she expected to wed a soft, desperate diplomat willing to sacrifice his pride for peace. She never expected to discover that humans don't just fight wars, they become them. This is the story of how a tactical marriage became a legend, how a princess learned that some species don't surrender because they can't imagine defeat, and how the galaxy discovered that the most dangerous predator often looks the most harmless. When the wedding bells fell silent, the war drums began, and nothing would ever be the same. Princess Zarathul stood at the edge of the observation deck, watching the human delegation's ship dock with her father's flagship. The vessel looked pitiful compared to the massive Kethmori dreadnoughts surrounding it, a small, battered transport that bore the scars of countless battles. She traced the fresh burn marks along its hull with her golden eyes, counting at least 12 separate impact sites that should have destroyed any normal craft. The war had been going poorly for the humans. 3 years of conflict had seen their outer colonies fall one by one to the superior Kethmori fleet. Their technology was primitive, their ships undersized, and their tactics predictable. By all rights, they should have surrendered months ago when the siege of New Terra began. Instead, they had sent this delegation with an unexpected proposal. Marriage, a union between their species to secure peace. Zarathul's father, Admiral King Vorthak, had been amused by the offer. The Kethmori were a proud warrior race, tall and powerful, with natural armor plating that could deflect small arms fire. Their 4 arms and enhanced reflexes made them deadly in combat, and their ships commanded respect across the galaxy. What could these soft, pink creatures possibly offer in return for peace? The answer, apparently, was her. The docking bay doors hissed open, and Zarathul straightened her ceremonial armor. As the king's daughter and a decorated war commander herself, she would be present for these negotiations. She had led 3 successful planetary assaults and earned the respect of her troops through tactical brilliance and personal courage. The idea that she would be traded like cargo to these defeated aliens left a bitter taste in her mouth. The human delegation emerged from their ship, and Zarathul studied them with professional interest. 5 individuals, all wearing simple dark uniforms without the elaborate decorations favored by most species. They moved with an odd precision, their steps synchronized in a way that spoke of military training. At their head walked a woman with graying hair and calm eyes, flanked by 4 others whose ages ranged from young to middle-aged. Admiral King Vorthak received them in his command chamber, a vast room designed to intimidate visitors with its displays of conquered worlds and trophy weapons. Zarathul took her position at his right hand, while her younger brother Prince Kethmor stood at his left. The human delegation approached the throne-like command chair without any visible sign of fear or awe. "I am Admiral Sarah Chun of the Human Colonial Defense Force," the lead woman announced in fluent Kethmori. "I come bearing a proposal that could end this conflict with honor for both our peoples." Vorthak leaned forward, his massive frame casting shadows across the humans. "Speak, Admiral Chun. We are curious to hear what terms you offer for your inevitable surrender." Chen's expression never changed. "Not surrender, Your Majesty. Alliance. We propose a union between our peoples, sealed by marriage between your daughter and one of our representatives." The suggestion was so absurd that several of the Kethmori officers began laughing. Zarathul felt her secondary hands clench into fists. The audacity of these defeated creatures was breathtaking. "You asked for an alliance," Vorthak said, his voice carrying dangerous undertones. "When your fleets burn in space and your colonies fall before our advance. What could you possibly offer that would interest us?" Admiral Chun gestured to the man standing behind her and slightly to the right. He was unremarkable by human standards, average height, brown hair, quiet demeanor. He wore the same simple uniform as the others, with no visible rank insignia or decorations. When he stepped forward, his movements carried a strange quality that made Zarathul's warrior instincts prickle with unidentified warning. "This is Marcus Kane," Chin said simply. "He has volunteered to serve as the human representative in this alliance." Zarathul studied the human called Marcus Kane. He was perhaps 30 years old by human reckoning, with unremarkable features and an almost scholarly bearing. Nothing about him suggested the warrior spirit that her people valued. His eyes met hers for a moment, and she was surprised to find them utterly calm. Not the desperate hope of a defeated enemy seeking mercy, but the steady gaze of someone assessing a situation with professional detachment. This one, Prince Kethmore's voice carried open mockery. This is your champion? He looks barely capable of holding a weapon, much less worthy of my sister's hand. Marcus Kane spoke for the first time, his voice carrying a mild accent. Appearances can be deceiving, Prince Kethmore. But perhaps we could discuss the practical terms of this arrangement before making judgments about worthiness. The casual way he addressed royalty without proper titles caused several guards to reach for their weapons. Vorthak raised a primary hand to stop them, more intrigued than offended. You have confidence, human. Tell me what advantage this marriage would bring to the Kethmori Empire. Admiral Chun activated a portable display unit. Star charts appeared in the air between them, showing the current battle lines and strategic positions. The war has cost both our peoples heavily. You've gained territory, but at the expense of ships and soldiers that could be used for expansion into more valuable sectors. We've lost ground, but our production capacity remains intact. A formal alliance would end the conflict and allow both sides to focus on more profitable ventures. It was a reasonable argument, but Zarathul knew her father well enough to recognize his skeptical expression. The Kethmori did not make alliances with weaklings. Victory was their way, not compromise. Your proposal has merit, Vorthak said slowly, but you misunderstand our nature. We are warriors. We take what we desire through strength, not negotiation. Why should I accept half measures when complete victory is within reach? The human delegation exchanged glances, some communication passing between them that Zarathul could not interpret. Marcus Kane stepped closer to the throne, moving with that same unsettling precision she had noticed before. Because, Your Majesty, you assume victory is assured. But consider this. In 3 years of warfare, how many human colonies have you successfully held after capture? The question hung in the air like a challenge. Zarathul knew the answer, and from her father's sudden stillness, so did he. Of the 17 colonies the Kethmori had conquered, 12 had been retaken by human forces within months. The humans fought with a persistence that defied logic, launching counterattack after counterattack with whatever ships and resources they could scrape together. We have faced resistance, Vorthak admitted carefully. But resistance ends when the resistors are eliminated. Marcus Kane nodded thoughtfully. That's certainly one approach. But you've been trying that strategy for 3 years with limited success. Meanwhile, every month of continued warfare costs you ships, personnel, and resources that could be used elsewhere. Our proposal offers a more efficient solution. The word efficient seemed to resonate with the Admiral King. The Kethmori respected strength, but they also valued practical thinking. A prolonged war that drained resources without providing clear benefits was antithetical to their expansion goals. What exactly are you proposing? Zarathul asked, speaking for the first time since the delegation arrived. A political marriage implies ongoing cooperation between our species. What form would that take? Admiral Chun smiled, the expression transforming her previously stern features. Trade agreements, technological exchange, joint operations against mutual threats. The human colonies possess industrial capacity and innovation that could benefit Kethmori expansion, while our people would gain protection and access to galactic markets. And if we simply took these things by force? Prince Kethmore interjected. Why negotiate when conquest serves the same purpose? Marcus Kane's response was delivered in the same mild tone, but something in his posture shifted slightly. Because forced cooperation is inefficient. Conquered peoples require constant supervision and produce minimal innovation. Partners, on the other hand, can contribute their full potential to mutual goals. Zarathul found herself studying the human more intently. His words were reasonable, even logical, but there was something underneath them that her instincts kept trying to identify. He spoke like a diplomat, but moved like something else. The negotiations continued for another 2 hours, covering trade routes, territorial boundaries, and resource allocation. The humans proved surprisingly well-informed about Kethmori expansion goals and strategic priorities. They offered specific proposals for joint ventures that would benefit both species, along with detailed projections showing the economic advantages of peace over continued warfare. Throughout the discussions, Marcus Kane remained largely silent, occasionally offering brief clarifications or answering direct questions. But Zarathul noticed that the other humans deferred to him in subtle ways: glances for approval, pauses for his input, adjustments based on his barely perceptible reactions. Whatever his official role, he was clearly more than just a marriage candidate. As the formal session concluded, Admiral Chun presented a preliminary treaty for review. We understand this represents a significant decision for your people. We're prepared to provide additional guarantees of good faith, including immediate cessation of all hostile activities and withdrawal from contested border zones. Vorthak accepted the documents with one of his primary hands while his secondary hands drummed thoughtfully on the armrest of his command chair. We will consider your proposal. You will remain aboard our flagship as guests while we deliberate. The dismissal was polite, but firm. As the humans were escorted to guest quarters, Zarathul caught Marcus Kane looking back at her once more. Again, she was struck by the complete absence of fear or uncertainty in his expression. He looked like someone taking mental notes for future reference. That evening, Zarathul requested a private meeting with her father. She found him in his personal study, surrounded by tactical displays and intelligence reports. The war room atmosphere was appropriate for their discussion. What are your thoughts on this proposal? Vorthak asked without preamble. Zarathul moved to the main display, studying the current battle positions. The humans make valid points about the cost of continued warfare. Our expansion into the Rigel sector has been delayed by 6 months because of ships tied up in this conflict. But there's something about their delegation that doesn't match their supposed desperation. They negotiate like equals, not defeated supplicants seeking mercy. Vorthak's 4 eyes focused on her with sharp attention. His daughter had inherited his tactical mind along with his warrior's instincts. Explain. Watch the recording of today's session. Pay attention to their body language, their responses to our displays of military strength. They're not intimidated. They're evaluating. Her father called up the relevant footage, reviewing key moments with the enhanced perception that had made him one of the most successful commanders in Kethmori history. After several minutes, he paused the display on an image of Marcus Kane's face during Prince Kethmor's mocking comments. You're right, Vorthak said slowly. This one shows no fear. But, more than that, he shows no surprise. As if he expected exactly this reception, which suggests they know more about us than they're revealing. The question is whether that knowledge comes from intelligence gathering or something else. Father and daughter studied the frozen image together. Marcus Kane's expression revealed nothing, but both warriors recognized the look of someone conducting their own assessment. There are rumors, Vorthak said finally. Stories from the border conflicts that our commanders dismiss as enemy propaganda. Claims about human combat capabilities that seem exaggerated. Zarathul had heard the same whispers. Tales of human soldiers fighting with impossible endurance, of ships continuing to fight long after they should have been destroyed, of ground troops who seem to view hopeless odds as merely challenging rather than defeating. Perhaps, she suggested carefully, we should learn more about this Marcus Kane before making any decisions. If I'm to marry him for political advantage, I should understand what we're gaining from the arrangement. Vorthak nodded approvingly. Agreed. Arrange a private meeting. Test his mettle directly. If he proves worthy of a warrior's daughter, the alliance may have merit. If not, he left the sentence unfinished, but the implication was clear. As Zarathul prepared for bed that night, she found herself thinking about the human's calm eyes and precise movements. Tomorrow, she would discover whether Marcus Kane was truly the soft diplomat he appeared to be, or something far more dangerous hiding behind a facade of diplomatic reasonableness. Either way, she had the distinct feeling that her life was about to become considerably more complicated. Zarathul found Marcus Kane in the flagship's observation lounge the next morning, standing before the massive viewport that showed the human transport still docked nearby. He wore simple civilian clothes rather than his military uniform, and appeared to be studying the Kethmori fleet formation with professional interest. She approached quietly, her natural armor making no sound on the deck plating. Impressive deployment, he said without turning around. Classic envelopment pattern, but modified to account for the gravitational effects of the binary star system. Your tactical officers know their business. The casual analysis of military positioning surprised her. You have experience with fleet formations? Marcus turned to face her, offering a slight smile that didn't quite reach his eyes. Some. I served aboard ship before my current assignment. He gestured toward the viewport. Your father's positioning creates multiple firing angles while maintaining escape routes. Very practical. Zarathul moved to stand beside him, her height advantage allowing her to look down at the human. Up close, she noticed details that had escaped her attention during yesterday's formal negotiations. Faint scars on his hands that spoke of weapons training. The way his weight remained perfectly balanced despite his relaxed posture. The slight callus on his right index finger that suggested regular firearms use. Admiral Chun mentioned you volunteered for this assignment. That suggests either remarkable dedication to peace or remarkable confidence in your survival. Both, I hope. His response was mild, but she caught something else in his tone. Amusement, perhaps. Though I admit the situation is more complex than our initial proposal suggested. Complex how? Marcus was quiet for a long moment, his gaze returning to the stars beyond the viewport. Princess Zarathul, what do you know about human military doctrine? The question seemed to come from nowhere, but she answered honestly. Limited information. Your tactics appear straightforward. Concentrate forces at strategic points and attack directly. Effective enough against weaker opponents, but lacking the sophistication for prolonged campaigns against superior technology. That's not entirely accurate. Marcus turned to face her fully, and she was again struck by the steadiness of his gaze. Human military thinking tends to focus on adaptation rather than predetermined strategy. We prefer to understand our opponents first, then develop appropriate responses. Something in his phrasing made her defensive. Are you suggesting we're predictable? I'm suggesting that every species has patterns. The Kethmori are exceptionally skilled warriors with excellent equipment and sound tactical training. But you approach warfare like a profession, rules, procedures, established methods. Humans approach it more like. He paused, seeming to search for the right words. Like an art form. Improvisation based on circumstances. Zarathul felt her secondary hands clench slightly. Art form? Warfare is about victory through superior force and planning. Sometimes. Other times it's about making your enemy believe they understand you while preparing surprises they can't anticipate. Marcus moved away from the viewport, settling into one of the lounge chairs with fluid grace. For instance, your assumption about our desperation. The comment hit closer to home than she cared to admit. You're saying yesterday's negotiations were deceptive? Not deceptive. Incomplete. We genuinely want peace, and the marriage alliance offers real benefits to both species. But our motivation isn't desperation, it's efficiency. Zarathul remained standing, using her height advantage to project authority. Explain. The war has been educational. We've learned a great deal about Kethmori capabilities, tactics, and strategic thinking. Your people are formidable opponents, exactly as advertised. But continuation of the conflict serves no useful purpose for either side. Educational. The word carried implications that made her warrior instincts prickle with unease. You speak as if this were some kind of experiment. Marcus was quiet for a moment, and when he spoke again, his tone had shifted to something more serious. Princess, may I ask you a direct question about your military experience? The change of subject felt deliberate, but she nodded permission. In your 3 planetary assaults, how many times did you encounter truly unexpected resistance? Situations where the enemy responded in ways your training hadn't prepared you for. Zarathul considered the question carefully. Her campaigns had been textbook operations, overwhelming force applied at strategic points until enemy resistance collapsed. Minimal. Standard siege tactics proved sufficient against defenders who lacked our technological advantages. Now consider this war. How many times have human responses surprised your commanders? The answer was uncomfortable. Nearly every engagement had included some element of the unexpected. Ships fighting long past the point where they should have surrendered. Ground troops continuing to resist even when completely surrounded. Colonies evacuating civilian populations through routes that shouldn't have existed. Surprise tactics don't constitute superior strategy, she said finally. Desperation makes soldiers unpredictable, but it doesn't make them effective. Marcus nodded thoughtfully. True, but what if the unpredictability was intentional rather than desperate? Before she could respond to that disturbing suggestion, Her communication device chimed with an urgent message. Admiral King Vorthak requested her immediate presence in the command center for a strategic briefing. As she prepared to leave, Marcus rose from his chair with that same fluid precision. Princess Zarathal, if you're truly considering this alliance, I suggest you review the complete records of our recent engagements. Pay particular attention to casualty ratios and resource expenditure. The numbers may surprise you. She left the lounge with his words echoing in her mind, but the urgent briefing drove such concerns aside temporarily. In the command center, she found her father studying a tactical display with obvious frustration. The holographic representation showed the Terran system, where Kethmori forces had been conducting the siege of humanity's primary world for 8 months. Report, she said simply. The humans have broken our siege lines. Vorthak's voice carried controlled anger. 3 coordinated strikes in the past 6 hours destroyed 2 heavy cruisers and damaged 4 others. Our blockade is no longer effective. Zarathal studied the display, noting the positions where Kethmori ships had been eliminated. The attacks showed sophisticated planning and precise execution, hardly the desperate flailing of a defeated enemy. Casualties? Over 2,000 personnel. The humans used some kind of new weapon system that our sensors didn't detect until impact. Vorthak manipulated the display to show recorded footage of the engagement. Watch this. The tactical recording showed a Kethmori heavy cruiser maintaining position in the outer blockade line when something struck it amidships. The explosion was catastrophic, venting atmosphere and debris across several kilometers. But what caught Zarathal's attention was the complete absence of any visible incoming projectile. Energy weapon? She asked. Negative. Analysis suggests kinetic impact, but we detected no incoming missiles or torpedoes. The attack came from empty space. Zarathal felt a cold certainty settling in her stomach. Show me the approach vectors. The display rotated to reveal the attack angles, and her suspicions were confirmed. The strikes had come from directions where no human ships were visible on sensors. Either the humans had developed perfect stealth technology, or they had found a way to attack from positions that seemed impossible. Recommendations? Vorthak asked. Withdraw to minimum safe distance and reassess. The words tasted like failure, but tactical reality demanded acknowledgement. If they can strike our ships without being detected, the siege is already broken. Her father's expression showed his agreement with her bitter assessment. The Kethmori had built their reputation on technological superiority and overwhelming force. An enemy who could neutralize those advantages changed everything. As if summoned by their conversation, Prince Kethmor entered the command center carrying a datapad and wearing an expression of confused frustration. Sister, father, I have the analysis you requested on human resource expenditure during this campaign. He activated the pad's display function, projecting casualty reports and economic data into the air above them. The numbers were startling in their implications. According to our intelligence estimates, the humans should have exhausted their ship construction capacity 4 months ago. Their available personnel should be insufficient to crew more than 60% of their remaining fleet. Their colonies should be producing barely enough resources to maintain basic defense. Zarathal studied the projections, comparing them to observe human performance. The discrepancy was enormous. These numbers suggest they should have surrendered already. Exactly. Yet not only are they still fighting, they appear to be fighting more effectively than when the war began. Kethmor highlighted specific data points. Our losses in the past 2 months exceed our losses in the first year of conflict. The implications were staggering. Either human capabilities had been drastically underestimated, or something fundamental about the situation was wrong. Zarathal thought about Marcus Kane's suggestion to review engagement records, and a disturbing possibility began to form. Father, I need access to complete battle recordings from the past year. Every engagement, including the ones classified above my current clearance level. Vorthak studied his daughter's expression and apparently recognized the same tactical thinking that had made her successful in previous campaigns. Granted, what are you looking for? Patterns that don't match our assumptions about human capabilities. She spent the next 4 hours in a secure analysis chamber, reviewing battle footage and tactical reports with the enhanced processing capabilities available to senior officers. What she found challenged everything she thought she knew about this war. The humans fought like no enemy the Kethmori had ever faced. Ships continued operating with damage that should have disabled them. Ground troops maintained cohesion under bombardment that should have broken their lines. Supply convoys appeared to operate on schedules that ignored the established principles of logistics. But more disturbing were the subtle details that only became apparent through careful analysis. Human ship movements showed an understanding of Kethmori tactics that went beyond simple observation. Their responses to standard maneuvers suggested they had somehow gained access to classified tactical doctrine. Their positioning consistently exploited weaknesses that weren't supposed to be known to enemy forces. By the time she finished her review, Zarathul had reached a conclusion that filled her with professional admiration and personal unease. The humans had been studying them, not just observing their tactics, but conducting a systematic analysis of Kethmori military capabilities. Every engagement had been both a battle and a learning experience, with the humans gathering data while the Kethmori focused on achieving victory. She found Marcus Kane in the same observation lounge where they had spoken that morning. He was reading something on a portable device, but looked up when she approached. "Finish your research?" he asked mildly. "You knew what I would find. I hoped you would recognize the truth when you saw it." Marcus set aside his device and gave her his full attention. "The question now is what you plan to do with that knowledge." Zarathul sat down across from him, studying his unremarkable features with new understanding. "You're not a diplomat, are you?" "Not exactly, no. Intelligence officer?" "Among other things." His smile held genuine amusement now. "The marriage proposal is legitimate, Princess. Admiral Chun and your father are negotiating in good faith. But you're right to suspect there are layers beneath the surface." "Such as?" Marcus was quiet for a moment, seeming to weigh his words carefully. "Your people are impressive warriors, honorable, skilled, and effective within the parameters of conventional warfare. But you approach conflict like a formal duel, rules, procedures, predictable escalation. Humans learned long ago that survival sometimes requires abandoning the rules." "You're saying we're too civilized?" "I'm saying you fight the war you train for, while we fight the war that exists." Marcus leaned forward slightly. "Every engagement has taught us something new about Kethmori capabilities. Your tactical doctrine, your equipment limitations, your decision-making patterns. We've been building a comprehensive understanding of how your military thinks." The casual admission of strategic deception should have angered her, but Zarathul found herself grudgingly impressed instead. To what end? Originally, to find a way to survive long enough for reinforcements to arrive. But as we learn more, we realize something interesting. Your people value strength and efficiency above almost everything else. A demonstration of human combat capability might prove more persuasive than any diplomatic argument. The pieces were starting to come together, creating a picture that was both alarming and fascinating. This entire war has been a demonstration. Not entirely. The conflicts were real, the casualties were real, and the threat to human colonies was genuine. But we used the circumstances to show your people what partnership with humans might offer. Zarathul thought about the impossible attack on the siege fleet, the continuing resistance despite overwhelming odds, the tactical innovations that had frustrated Kethmori commanders for months. "What kind of partnership are you really proposing?" Marcus Kane's expression shifted, becoming more serious than she had yet seen it. "The galaxy is changing, Princess. New threats are emerging from the outer systems, species with technologies and capabilities that neither humans nor Kethmori could face alone. We need allies who can adapt to unexpected challenges, just as you need partners who can provide industrial support and strategic flexibility. And the marriage? A symbol of trust between species who have learned to respect each other's capabilities. Nothing more or less than that." His gaze met hers directly. "Though I admit I'm curious to see what kind of person produces the tactical analysis you just completed." Something in his tone made her realize that she had been tested as much as he had. The review of battle records, the questions about human capabilities, the careful revelation of tactical deceptions. All of it had been designed to measure her intellectual flexibility and professional competence. "You've been evaluating me," she said, "just as you've been evaluating me. The difference is that I knew what you were doing." Despite herself, Zarathul felt a spark of genuine interest in this unremarkable human who spoke like a scholar but thought like a strategist. "What was your conclusion?" That Admiral King Vorthak's daughter is exactly as formidable as advertised, but flexible enough to recognize when her assumptions might be wrong. A useful quality in both war and marriage. Before she could respond, her communication device chimed again with another urgent message. This time, the alert carried the highest priority code, indicating an immediate threat to the flagship itself. They were under attack. The flagship shuddered under impact as Zarathul and Marcus Kane rushed toward the command center. Emergency lights bathed the corridors in red, and the sound of running feet echoed from multiple directions as crew members responded to battle stations. Another impact, stronger this time, sent them both stumbling against the corridor wall. That felt like main battery fire, Zarathul said grimly. Something with serious firepower. Marcus steadied himself and checked a small device strapped to his wrist. Not human ships. The energy signature is wrong. They reached the command center to find controlled chaos. Admiral King Vorthak stood at the central tactical display, while officers shouted reports from their stations. The holographic representation showed 3 massive vessels approaching from the edge of the system, their configuration unlike anything in known databases. Status report, Zarathul demanded as she took her position at her father's side. Unknown hostiles, Prince Kethmore called out from the sensor station. 3 vessels, each approximately twice the size of our heaviest dreadnought. They appeared without warning and immediately opened fire on both our fleet and the human transport. The main display zoomed in on the attacking ships, revealing sleek, predatory designs that seemed to absorb light rather than reflect it. Their hulls showed no obvious weapon ports or engine signatures, yet they were somehow projecting devastating firepower across impossible distances. Casualties, Vorthak asked tersely. 4 destroyers lost, 2 cruisers severely damaged. The human transport took a direct hit, but remains operational. The tactical officer paused, studying his readouts with obvious confusion. Sir, their damage control response is unusual. On the display, they could see the human ship trailing atmosphere from a massive hull breach, yet its maneuvering capabilities appeared unimpaired. As they watched, something emerged from the damaged section. Not escape pods, but small craft that immediately began moving toward the attacking vessels. Suicide run, Prince Kethmore suggested. Marcus Kane stepped closer to the display, his expression grim. No, those are our combat shuttles. They're not running, they're engaging. The statement was so absurd that several Kethmori officers turned to stare at him. Combat shuttles were support craft, designed for transportation and limited reconnaissance. The idea of using them against capital ships was military insanity. Incoming transmission from the lead hostile, the communications officer announced. Audio only, unknown language. The voice that filled the command center was unlike anything Zarathul had ever heard. Harmonic and musical, but with undertones that made her skin crawl. The words were incomprehensible, but the tone carried unmistakable menace. Can we translate? Vorthak asked. Negative, sir. The linguistic patterns don't match anything in our databases. Marcus Kane pulled out his portable device and quickly entered a series of commands. After a moment, he looked up with an expression of cold certainty. Kithira, we've encountered them before. Every eye in the command center focused on him. The Kithira were legends, ancient stories told by deep space traders about a species that had supposedly vanished millennia ago. Ghost ships that appeared without warning, attacked without communication, and disappeared as mysteriously as they had come. The Kithira are myths, Prince Kethmore stated flatly. The Kithira, Marcus replied calmly, are very real, and they're extremely dangerous. We need to evacuate this system immediately. Admiral King Vorthak drew himself to his full impressive height. The Kethmori do not retreat from any enemy. With respect, Your Majesty, you've never faced this enemy before. Look at your sensor readings. Can you detect how they're generating their firepower? Do you see any obvious propulsion systems? Can you identify their hull composition or energy signatures? The silence that followed his questions was answer enough. The attacking ships remained largely invisible to Kethmori's sensors, appearing only as gravitational shadows that somehow produced devastating weapons fire. On the tactical display, the small human shuttles had reached engagement range with the nearest Kithira vessel. Instead of the expected swift destruction, something remarkable happened. The shuttle formation spread out, and began executing complex maneuvers, their movements coordinated with inhuman precision. Energy beams that should have vaporized them missed by margins so narrow it seemed impossible. How are they doing that? Zarathul breathed. Marcus was working frantically on his device, apparently communicating with the human shuttles through some form of encrypted channel. Predictive evasion protocols. We've fought the Kythera before. That's impossible, Vorthak stated. If humanity had encountered threats of this magnitude, we would have detected the conflicts. Not in this galaxy, Marcus said without looking up from his device. The Kythera are extragalactic predators. They appear in systems with developing, spacefaring civilizations, harvest whatever they need, and move on. Humanity's home system was attacked 18 years ago. The implications of that statement hit the command center like a physical blow. If the humans had faced this threat before, it meant their apparent technological inferiority was deliberate, a disguise to conceal capabilities that might threaten established galactic powers. The shuttles are requesting fire support, Marcus continued. They've identified a vulnerability in the nearest Kythera ship, but they need capital ship weapons to exploit it. Prince Kethmore looked incredulous. Shuttles are requesting fire support? They should be requesting evacuation. Instead of answering, Marcus activated his device's display function, projecting tactical data into the command center's holographic system. The image showed the Kythera vessel with highlighting that identified specific structural points, areas where concentrated fire might penetrate their mysterious defenses. These coordinates, he said simply. Full battery, synchronized strike. Vorthak studied the targeting data with professional interest. What makes you certain this will be effective? Because 18 years ago, my ship used this same technique to destroy a Kythera harvester in the Sol system. The casual revelation that this unremarkable human had personally fought these legendary predators shifted the entire dynamic in the command center. Zarathul looked at Marcus Kane with new eyes, seeing past the diplomatic facade to something far more dangerous underneath. Your ship? She asked carefully. The UES Retribution. Heavy assault carrier, Prometheus class. His tone remained conversational, but there was steel underneath it now. We lost 60% of our squadron in that engagement, but we learned their weaknesses. Admiral King Vorthak made a command decision. All batteries, target coordinates provided by the human. Synchronized strike on my mark. The Kethmori fleet responded with disciplined precision, their powerful weapons systems focusing on the designated target points. When the Admiral King gave the order to fire, space lit up with concentrated energy beams that converged on the nearest Kythera vessel. The results were spectacular. The alien ship's defenses, which had seemed impenetrable moments before, collapsed under the precisely targeted assault. Secondary explosions rippled across its hull as critical systems failed in cascade. Within seconds, the massive vessel was drifting powerless, its threat eliminated. The remaining 2 Kythera ships responded immediately, adjusting their positions and targeting priorities. But something had changed. They were no longer engaging with the casual confidence of predators facing helpless prey. Their movements suggested caution, even concern. They're withdrawing, the sensor officer reported with obvious disbelief. On the display, the 2 surviving alien vessels were indeed pulling back, their energy signatures shifting in ways that suggested preparation for departure. Whatever they had come to accomplish, the loss of their companion had apparently convinced them that the cost was too high. Pursuit course? Prince Kethmore asked. Negative, Marcus said firmly. Let them go. Kythera ships are faster than anything else in space when they choose to run. And if we damage one without destroying it, they'll return with a full hunting pack. Vorthak considered this advice for a moment, then nodded agreement. All ships maintain positions. Do not pursue. They watched the Kythera vessels accelerate beyond any speed their sensors could track, vanishing into the cosmic background as if they had never existed. The threat was over, but the questions it raised were just beginning. Report to my quarters in 1 hour, Vorthak told Marcus quietly. All of you, he added, including Zarathul and Prince Kethmore in the summons. We have much to discuss. As the command center returned to normal operations, Zarathul found herself walking alongside Marcus Kane toward the guest quarters. The corridor was quiet now, but she remained acutely aware that everything had changed in the past hour. The UES Retribution, she said finally. Heavy assault carrier. That makes you what? A shuttle pilot? Marcus glanced at her with something that might have been amusement. Ship's captain, actually, though I spent plenty of time in shuttles during the Kythera engagement. A ship's captain, not a diplomat, not an intelligence officer, but a military commander with experience fighting enemies that even the Kethmori found impossible to detect. The marriage proposal suddenly took on entirely new significance. "How many people know about your real background?" she asked. "Admiral Chun, obviously. A few others in the human command structure. Your father will know everything within the hour." Marcus stopped walking and turned to face her. "The question is whether that knowledge changes your opinion about this alliance." Zarathul considered the question seriously. The human standing before her was not the soft diplomat she had been expecting to marry for political convenience. He was a proven warrior who had fought enemies that existed only in legends, survived conflicts that had apparently shaped human military doctrine, and hidden his true nature behind a facade of scholarly reasonableness. "It makes the alliance more interesting," she admitted, "but it also raises questions about trust. How much of what you've told us is actually true?" "All of it. I volunteered for this assignment because I believe the alliance will benefit both our species." The Kythera attack just proved that more dramatically than I expected. They had reached the junction where their paths diverged. Marcus to the guest quarters, Zarathul to her own chambers. She paused, studying his features one more time. "Marcus Kane of a US Retribution," she said slowly. "What exactly are you not telling us?" His expression grew serious, the diplomatic mask dropping away entirely. That the Kythera attack wasn't random. They're moving into this galaxy systematically, testing the defenses of established civilizations. Today was a probe, not a serious assault. And when they returned, they'll bring enough ships to sterilize every inhabited system in Kethmori space. Unless we're prepared for them. The corridors suddenly felt very cold. "How long do we have?" 6 months, maybe less. The Kythera are thorough, but they're also impatient. They won't give us time to build traditional defenses. Zarathul felt the familiar weight of tactical responsibility settling on her shoulders. This was no longer about political marriages or territorial disputes. This was about species survival against an enemy that could appear anywhere without warning and strike with impossible precision. "What do you recommend?" Marcus Kane's answer came without hesitation, delivered in the tone of a military commander rather than a diplomatic representative. "Integration. Complete tactical cooperation between human and Kethmori forces with shared intelligence and coordinated response protocols. The Kythera can be defeated, but only if we fight them together. And the marriage alliance becomes a military partnership sealed by personal bonds. Nothing more romantic than that, but nothing less important either." As they parted company, Zarathul found herself thinking not about political convenience or diplomatic protocols, but about the challenge of fighting an enemy that defied conventional understanding. For the first time since this alliance had been proposed, she was genuinely curious about what Marcus Kane might be like as a partner rather than just a symbolic husband. An hour later, they gathered in Admiral King Vorthak's private quarters, a Spartanly furnished space that reflected its occupants' military priorities. Marcus Kane brought a portable data storage unit, while Zarathul and Prince Kethmor came armed with questions that had been growing more urgent since the attack ended. "Show us," Vorthak said without preamble. Marcus activated the storage unit, filling the room with holographic displays that showed star charts, technical specifications, and battle recordings from conflict the Kethmori had never imagined. The scale of the information was staggering, detailed intelligence on enemy capabilities, tactical innovations born from desperate necessity, and strategic assessments that painted a picture of threats spanning multiple galaxies. "This is what you're really offering," Zarathul said, understanding dawning in her voice. "Not just an alliance, but survival." "The choice," Marcus replied quietly, "is entirely yours." 3 days after the Kythera attack, the marriage ceremony took place aboard Admiral King Vorthak's flagship in a modified cargo bay that had been hastily converted into something resembling a diplomatic venue. The speed of the arrangement reflected the new urgency both species felt about formalizing their alliance, but it also created an atmosphere that was more military briefing than romantic celebration. Zarathul stood before the assembled witnesses wearing her formal ceremonial armor, polished to mirror brightness and decorated with the battle honors she had earned in previous campaigns. The armor was both beautiful and functional, a statement that this union represented a warrior's commitment rather than a political convenience. Across from her, Marcus Kane wore what she had learned was the dress uniform of the Human Colonial Defense Force. Dark blue fabric with minimal decorations that somehow managed to convey competence rather than humility. The ceremony itself was brief, combining Kethmori tradition with human customs in a way that satisfied both species' requirements for legitimacy. Admiral Chun served as the human representative, while Admiral King Vorthak performed the Kethmori rituals that bound warriors together in common cause. The vows were martial rather than romantic, pledges of mutual support, tactical cooperation, and shared defense against common enemies. When Marcus placed the traditional Kethmori warrior's bracelet on her secondary wrist, Zarathul felt the weight of more than just metal. The alliance was real now, sealed by bonds that both species considered sacred. Whatever came next, they would face it as partners rather than strangers. The reception was held in the officers' wardroom, with representatives from both fleets sharing what passed for celebration under wartime conditions. Zarathul found herself studying the human delegation with new interest, recognizing the subtle signs that marked them as experienced military personnel rather than diplomatic staff. Admiral Chun moved with the precise bearing of someone accustomed to command, while the younger humans showed the alert awareness of soldiers expecting trouble. "Your people hide their nature well," she commented to Marcus during a brief moment of relative privacy. "Survival skill," he replied quietly. "Most species react poorly when they discover that humans have been fighting a war most of the galaxy doesn't know exists. And now we're part of that war. You were always part of it. The Kithira don't distinguish between species when they harvest systems. We just gave you a chance to fight back effectively." Prince Kethmor approached them carrying a datapad and wearing the expression of someone who had discovered something disturbing. "Sister, I have the intelligence summary you requested about human fleet capabilities." He activated the pad's display, showing tactical assessments that had been updated following Marcus's revelations about the Kithira conflict. The numbers were startling in their implications. According to this analysis, human ships have been operating at approximately 30% of their actual combat capability during our war. Their weapons systems are more sophisticated than they appeared, their defensive measures more comprehensive, and their strategic reserves significantly larger than our estimates suggested. Zarathul studied the projections, understanding immediately what her brother was implying. They could have ended this conflict months ago if they had chosen to. The deception was necessary, Marcus said without apparent shame. If we had revealed our full capabilities, every major power in the galaxy would have viewed humanity as a threat rather than a potential ally. The Kithira War taught us to be very careful about who we trust with our real strength. The admission was both impressive and disturbing. The humans had fought a 3-year war while deliberately handicapping themselves, maintaining the fiction of technological inferiority while gathering intelligence on Kethmori capabilities. The level of discipline and strategic thinking required for such an operation was remarkable. "What other deceptions should we expect?" Prince Kethmor asked bluntly. Marcus considered the question for a moment before answering. "Our industrial capacity is approximately 10 times larger than we've admitted. Our ship construction rate could supply replacement vessels faster than we've been losing them. And our population is distributed across more systems than anyone realizes." Admiral King Vorthak, who had been listening from a nearby conversation, moved to join them. His expression showed the mixture of admiration and concern that marked a professional soldier's response to discovering a formidable new ally. "How many ships could you deploy if the situation required full mobilization?" he asked directly. "Approximately 1,500 capital ships, with supporting craft in proportion." Marcus delivered the number with casual precision, not including vessels currently assigned to deep space operations or home system defense. The figure was larger than the entire Kethmori battle fleet. Combined with their demonstrated technological capabilities, it meant that humanity could potentially challenge any power in the known galaxy if they chose to reveal their true strength. "Why tell us now?" Zarathul asked. "Because the Kithira return schedule has been accelerated. Our deep space monitoring stations detected scout ships in 3 adjacent systems within the past 48 hours. They're preparing for a major incursion." Admiral Chen joined their group, her expression grim with shared knowledge. "Our analysts estimate 6 to 8 weeks before they begin systematic attacks. When they come, they'll target every inhabited system simultaneously. There won't be time for gradual escalation or careful deployment. Vorthak absorbed this information with the calm professionalism that had made him one of the most successful military leaders in Kethmori history. What do you recommend? Immediate integration of fleet commands, joint training exercises to develop coordinated tactics, and establishment of unified communication protocols for rapid response deployment. Marcus activated a portable display that showed proposed force compositions and deployment schedules. The Kithira can be defeated, but only if we fight them as a single military entity rather than separate allied fleets. The strategic discussion continued for another hour, covering technical specifications, logistical requirements, and tactical innovations that would be necessary for effective cooperation. Through it all, Zarathul found herself impressed by the depth of human planning and the sophistication of their military thinking. These were not desperate refugees seeking protection, but experienced warriors offering genuine partnership. Later that evening, she found herself in the quarters that had been assigned for her, and Marcus to share, a concession to the marriage alliance that neither of them had explicitly discussed. The space was larger than standard officer accommodations, with separate sleeping areas and a common room equipped for both work and relaxation. Marcus was reviewing tactical displays when she entered, his attention focused on what appeared to be Kithira ship configurations and attack patterns. She studied the data over his shoulder, noting details that hadn't been visible during the brief engagement they had witnessed. "These vessels are larger than I realized," she observed. "The scouts are smaller. What we faced was a light reconnaissance force, probably 3 ships operating independently to test response capabilities." Marcus highlighted specific features on the holographic display. A serious assault would involve coordination between dozens of vessels, each one capable of sterilizing a planet's surface. The scale of the threat was almost impossible to comprehend. Zarathul had led campaigns against fortified worlds, but the idea of enemies who could destroy entire planets as a routine tactic challenged her understanding of warfare. How did humanity survive their first attack? Barely. We lost 4 colonies and approximately 200 million people before we developed effective countermeasures. Marcus's voice carried the weight of personal experience. The Earth system defense took 18 hours of continuous fighting. Most of our fleet was destroyed, but we learned what we needed to know. And now you're sharing that knowledge with us. Because alone, neither of our species can guarantee survival. Together, we might be strong enough to protect this entire galaxy. Zarathul moved to the room's viewport, looking out at the combined human and Kethmori fleets that now represented more than just a ceasefire. The political marriage had become something more significant, a military alliance between species who understood the true cost of failure. "Marcus," she said finally, "what do you expect from this marriage? Not the political aspects, but the personal relationship between us." He was quiet for a long moment, apparently considering his words carefully. "Honesty, mutual respect, partnership in the truest sense. We're going to be fighting for our lives together. That tends to create bonds that go beyond formal agreements. And after the war, assuming we survive. I haven't thought much beyond survival. But if we do win, we'll have proven that different species can work together effectively. That might be worth building on." It was a practical answer rather than a romantic one, but Zarathul found herself appreciating the honesty. This marriage had never been about personal attraction or emotional compatibility. It was about creating a foundation for cooperation between species who needed each other more than either had initially realized. "I should warn you," she said, "that Kethmori partnerships are taken seriously. If we're going to be married, even for political reasons, I expect genuine commitment to our mutual success." Marcus looked up from his tactical displays, meeting her eyes with the steady gaze she was beginning to recognize as characteristic. "Princess Zarathul, I've spent the past 3 years learning everything possible about Kethmori culture and military capabilities. If I wasn't prepared for commitment, I wouldn't have volunteered for this assignment." The sincerity in his voice convinced her that he understood what he was agreeing to. Kethmori marriages were partnerships between equals, with shared responsibility for each other's honor and success. The fact that he had studied their culture extensively suggested preparation that went far beyond diplomatic necessity. "Then, we understand each other," she said simply. Over the next several days, they fell into a routine that was part military briefing, part cultural exchange, and part strategic planning session. Marcus shared intelligence about Kithira tactics, and capabilities, while Zarathul provided insights into Kethmori fleet organization and strategic doctrine. They worked together on integration plans, training schedules, and coordination protocols that would transform two separate military forces into a unified defense fleet. The process was complicated by the need to maintain operational security while building trust between species who had been enemies just weeks before. Human technical specialists worked alongside Kethmori engineers to develop weapons systems capable of penetrating Kythera defenses. Tactical officers from both fleets trained together in simulated combat scenarios that pushed the boundaries of conventional military thinking. Through it all, Zarathul found herself developing genuine respect for Marcus Kane as both a strategist and a partner. He approached problems with a combination of analytical thinking and creative innovation that complemented her own tactical style. More importantly, he treated their marriage as a working partnership rather than a diplomatic formality, consulting her on decisions and deferring to her expertise in areas where she had more experience. 2 weeks after the ceremony, they received confirmation that their preparations had been worthwhile. Deep space monitors detected a massive Kythera fleet forming at the edge of the galaxy, estimated to contain more than 50 capital ships along with supporting vessels. The force was large enough to overwhelm any single species' defenses, but it would also serve as a test of the new human-Kethmori alliance. Time to find out if this marriage was worth the trouble, Marcus said as they reviewed the threat assessment. It will be, Zarathul replied with confidence, born from 2 weeks of successful cooperation. We're stronger together than either of us was alone. As alarm signals began sounding throughout the combined fleet, calling all personnel to battle stations, she realized that their real wedding test was about to begin. Not the ceremony that had made them political allies, but the crucible of combat that would prove whether their partnership could survive when their lives depended on it. The Kythera fleet emerged from hyperspace at the edge of the Vortex system like a plague of mechanical locusts, their dark hulls seeming to devour the starlight around them. 53 capital ships arranged in a formation that defied conventional tactical understanding, supported by hundreds of smaller vessels that moved with predatory grace. The combined human-Kethmori defense fleet, numbering barely 30 ships, looked pitifully inadequate against such overwhelming force. Zarathul stood beside Marcus in the flagship's command center, watching the tactical display with the calm professionalism that had carried her through previous battles. But this was unlike anything she had faced before. The enemy vessels showed no obvious weapon ports, no visible engines, no recognizable design features that would suggest weaknesses to exploit. Estimated time to engagement range, Admiral King Vorthak asked from his command position. 43 minutes at current approach speed, the tactical officer replied. But, sir, their acceleration curve is inconsistent with known physics. They could be here in 10 minutes or 4 hours, depending on whatever propulsion system they're using. Marcus was working at a portable command station that had been integrated into the Kethmori systems, coordinating with both fleets simultaneously. All human ships implement Protocol 7. Kethmori vessels prepare for synchronized strike pattern Delta 4. What is Protocol 7? Prince Kethmor asked from his position at the sensor array. Organized unpredictability, Marcus replied without looking up from his displays. The Kythera predict enemy behavior based on logical tactical doctrine. Protocol 7 abandons doctrine in favor of controlled chaos. As if to demonstrate his point, the human ships suddenly scattered from their defensive formation, each vessel moving in a different direction with no apparent coordination. To Kethmori eyes, it looked like panic, a complete breakdown of military discipline under pressure. They're retreating, one of the junior officers muttered. No, Zarathul said, studying the movement patterns more carefully. They're positioning. Look at the vectors. She was right. Despite their apparently random movements, the human ships were taking positions that would provide overlapping fields of fire from unexpected angles. It was tactical thinking that prioritized effectiveness over appearance, a willingness to look cowardly in order to achieve tactical advantage. The Kythera fleet responded to the human dispersal by adjusting their own formation, concentrating their forces in preparation for what appeared to be a standard pursuit engagement. But Marcus had anticipated this response. All ships, execute strike pattern Delta 4 on my mark. His voice carried across both fleets through the integrated communication system. Kethmori vessels, full power to forward batteries. Human ships, implement Kythera-specific targeting protocols. Mark, what happened next challenged everything Zarathul thought she knew about space combat. The scattered human ships suddenly accelerated with impossible precision, their movements coordinated despite being spread across thousands of kilometers. Simultaneously, the Kethmori fleet opened fire with concentrated energy beams aimed at specific points on the Kythera vessels, targeting data that Marcus had somehow provided in real time. The result was devastation. 3 Kythera ships took critical damage before they could respond, their mysterious defenses overwhelmed by precisely coordinated strikes from multiple directions. Secondary explosions rippled across their hulls as internal systems failed in cascade, proving that despite their alien nature, they could still be killed. But the enemy response was swift and terrible. The remaining Kythera vessels opened fire with weapons that defied understanding, energy beams that somehow curved through space to strike targets behind cover. 2 Kethmori destroyers disappeared in brilliant flashes, vaporized so completely that their debris fields glittered like cosmic dust. Evasive maneuvers. Vorthak commanded. All ships, random pattern dispersal. But Marcus was already ahead of him, his fingers moving across control interfaces within human speed. Negative. Maintain formation integrity. Implement conticule targeting solution. Countercurve. Prince Kethmore demanded. What does that even mean? Instead of answering, Marcus activated his personal communication system. When he spoke, his voice carried across every ship in both fleets, but the tone had changed completely. This was no longer the mild diplomat or careful strategist. This was something else entirely. All vessels, this is Captain Kane. The Kythera are using gravitational lens weapons to curve their fire around obstacles. Standard evasion patterns are useless. Implement dimensional shift protocols immediately. Dimensional shift protocols. Zarathul had never heard the term, but the human ships responded instantly. Their positions seemed to blur slightly, as if they were occupying space that was almost, but not quite where they appeared to be. The next wave of curved energy beams passed through empty space where the human vessels should have been. Impossible, breathed the sensor officer. Our readings show them in position, but the weapons aren't hitting. Marcus's hands moved across his control interface with mechanical precision, directing both fleets in a dance of destruction that seemed to anticipate every Kythera move. His earlier mild demeanor had vanished completely, replaced by something that was purely predatory. This was Marcus Kane as he truly was, not a diplomat playing at war, but a weapon shaped by 18 years of impossible conflict. Kethmori heavy cruisers concentrate fire on grid reference Alpha 7. Human destroyers flanking maneuver Theta Prime. All fighters execute swarm protocol on my command. The battle evolved into something beyond conventional understanding. Marcus orchestrated the combined fleet like a conductor directing a symphony of destruction, each move calculated to exploit weaknesses in Kythera tactics that he seemed to understand instinctively. Ships moved in patterns that looked suicidal, but proved devastatingly effective. Weapons fired at empty space only to strike targets that somehow materialized at exactly the right moment. Zarathul watched in fascination as her new husband demonstrated capabilities that bordered on supernatural. He wasn't just commanding the fleet. He was thinking faster than the enemy could respond, anticipating their moves 3 steps ahead and positioning assets to counter tactics before the Kythera even implemented them. How was he doing this? Prince Kethmore whispered. Experience, Admiral King Vorthak replied grimly. This is what 18 years of fighting an impossible enemy produces. He's not just a ship captain. He's evolved into something designed specifically to kill Kythera. The tide of battle was turning. Human and Kethmori ships worked together with seamless coordination, their different capabilities complementing each other in ways that multiplied their individual effectiveness. Kythera vessels, despite their superior technology and overwhelming numbers, found themselves being systematically destroyed by tactics they couldn't predict or counter. Marcus Kane stood at his command station like a living avatar of war, his attention split between dozens of simultaneous engagements while his hands moved across control interfaces with inhuman speed. He was no longer the quiet diplomat who had proposed marriage for political convenience. This was something forged in the crucible of desperate survival, refined through countless battles into a weapon that could think. Kythera flagship is breaking formation, the tactical officer reported. They're attempting to withdraw. Negative, Marcus said flatly. All ships, execute closure protocol. Do not allow enemy withdrawal. If they escape, they'll return with a larger fleet. What followed was the systematic annihilation of an enemy force that should have been invincible. Under Marcus's direction, the combined fleet hunted down fleeing Kythera vessels with relentless efficiency, using tactics that turned their own superior speed against them. Ships that tried to run found themselves trapped by gravitational anomalies that the human vessels somehow generated. Vessels that tried to fight were overwhelmed by coordinated strikes from impossible angles. When the last Kythera ship finally exploded in a brilliant cascade of exotic energy, the silence in the command center was profound. 53 enemy capital ships had been reduced to glittering debris fields, while the combined human Kethmori fleet had lost only 7 vessels. It was a victory so complete that it redefined what both species thought possible in space combat. Marcus Kane slowly straightened from his command station, his hands finally still after hours of constant motion. When he turned to face the rest of the command center, Zarathul saw exhaustion in his eyes, but also satisfaction. This was what he had been designed for, the purpose that 18 years of impossible war had shaped him to fulfill. Status report, he said in a voice that was once again mild and controlled. All Kythera vessels destroyed. Prince Kethmore reported, still staring at his sensor displays in disbelief. No survivors detected. Minimal damage to our forces. Admiral King Vorthak approached Marcus with an expression that combined respect and wariness. Captain Kane, that was the most extraordinary display of tactical command I have ever witnessed. But I find myself wondering what else you haven't told us about human capabilities. Marcus considered the question for a moment before answering. Nothing else, Your Majesty. What you saw today was the culmination of everything humanity learned from our first encounter with the Kythera. We've had 18 years to develop countermeasures, tactics, and technology specifically designed to defeat them. And now we've proven that the alliance works. Human innovation combined with Kethmori strength can protect this galaxy from threats that neither species could face alone. Zarathul moved to stand beside her husband, studying his profile as he reviewed post-battle reports. The quiet diplomat she had married had revealed himself to be something far more dangerous. A warrior specifically evolved to fight enemies that existed beyond conventional understanding. But, rather than being disturbed by the deception, she found herself impressed by the necessity that had created it. Marcus, she said quietly, when you proposed this marriage alliance, you knew this battle was coming. I hope we could avoid it. But, yes, I knew it was probable. He met her gaze directly. The question now is whether you're satisfied with what you've married into. Zarathul considered the question seriously. She had expected to marry a diplomat for political convenience. Instead, she had bound herself to a living weapon whose very existence represented humanity's response to impossible threats. The marriage had become something far more significant than either species had originally intended. Ask me again after we see what kind of peace you're equally capable of creating, she replied finally. As the combined fleet began the process of collecting survivors and assessing damage, Zarathul found herself looking forward to discovering what other surprises her new husband might prove capable of. The war was over, but the alliance they had forged in battle would reshape the galaxy in ways neither species could yet imagine. The human colonies would no longer hide their capabilities. The Kethmori would no longer stand alone against threats from beyond known space. And somewhere in the vast darkness between galaxies, other predators would learn that this particular region of space was now defended by something they had never encountered before, cooperation between species who understood that survival required evolution. Marcus Kane had proven himself worthy of a warrior's daughter, but more importantly, he had proven that the marriage between their peoples offered hope for a future that neither could achieve alone. In the end, that was worth any amount of political convenience or tactical deception. The galaxy was safe, their alliance was proven, and Zarathul had discovered that sometimes the most dangerous predator was indeed the one who looked the most harmless, until circumstances required them to reveal their true nature. As she watched Marcus coordinate post-battle operations with the same calm efficiency he had shown during combat, she realized that she was genuinely looking forward to spending the rest of her life learning what other capabilities her remarkable husband might yet reveal. The marriage had been arranged for political necessity, but it was evolving into something far more interesting. a partnership between equals who had learned to respect each other's strengths, and who together might prove capable of reshaping the galaxy itself.